BookTube, welcome back to my channel. Today we're here to do a little look back at my April TBR and see how successful I was in meeting my reading goals. At the beginning of the year, I started a little series where I film my monthly TBR, and at the end of the month or at the beginning of the next month, I take a little look back and see how many of the books I'd put on my ambitious TBR that I actually managed to read. And so this is that video, so stay tuned as we look back at my wildly ambitious plans and whether or not I succeeded in accomplishing them. Hey there, BookTube, welcome back to my channel. This is my April TBR, or at least some of the books that are on my TBR right now. Let's talk about it. In April, I'm planning to read a lot of books. Is there any month where I say any different? Nope. In April, I'm planning to participate in a couple of readathons and to finish a couple of reading challenges and to read some ARCs and to read some books from the library just because, and to have some fun while I read. So let's talk about these books and why I chose them. The first 4 books on my April TBR are to participate in hashtag Aussie April, where the goal is to read books that were written by Australian authors. Hashtag Aussie April was really successful for me. I planned to read 4 books to complete the challenges. I read 4 books to complete the challenges. I met all the goals for my hashtag Aussie April. So I'm really pleased about that. So at least I know we're starting on a good foot. The first book was 9 Perfect Strangers by Leanne Moriarty. I got an overdrive copy, ebook copy from my library. I've already read it. Yes, so I read 9 Perfect Strangers even before filming this video. So yes, first book that I mentioned, I read. This one is Burial Rites by Hannah Kent. Next one is A Natural Way of Doing Things, or The Natural Way of Things by Charlotte Wood. Burial Rites by Hannah Kent, I got this, I read it. The Natural Way of Things by Charlotte Wood, I also read from the library, but I returned my copy to the library already. And also Terra Nullius. And I read Terra Nullius by Claire G. Coleman. The author is an Aboriginal author, and so that met the challenge of reading something that was written by an Indigenous writer. And so yeah, I completed all 4 prompts for hashtag Aussie April. I still have books by Australian authors that have carried over into May, however, because, well, I like books by Australian authors. I mean, I just like books in general. I've been talking about reading all the Man Booker previous winners this year. So based on my schedule, I have 4 books that I want to read in April, and I don't have them yet. A couple of them I've requested from the library, and 2 of them I've ordered from Book Depository, and they haven't arrived yet. So I don't have copies to show you of those books yet either, but they are Rites of Passage by William Golding, Midnight's Children by Salman Rushdie, Schindler's. I read Rites of Passage as an e-copy because I still don't have a physical copy, and I also read Salman Rushdie's Midnight's Children. I got this one from the library, but I also ordered a copy from Book Depository, and the others are still on my TBR. I'm behind now on my Man Booker reading, so I'm gonna have to catch up, so you'll hear more about that later. And Life and Times of Michael Kay by J.M. Coetzee. So I'll be reading those in April, even though I don't have copies right now. The next 6 books are to complete the bonus round of Book Challenge by Eyre, which is a Facebook group that I joined. It's a 4-month challenge where you choose 10 books to meet 10 prompts. And then I have 6 left that I need to read by the end of April in order to complete the bonus round. And so I don't have all 6 of the books right here. One of them is downstairs, and I keep forgetting to take it out of my bookshelf. Yeah, eventually I had to do it. I still need to read. I need to finish Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. I quit on Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, and my reason for doing so doesn't really make sense. I started reading this book in March to participate in Steve Donahue's BookTube read-along. I didn't finish. I mean, I really didn't get very far. So I continued in April because I wanted to read this for Book Challenge by Erin, and I still wasn't really making much progress. And I knew that I had to read it by the end of April in order to finish that challenge because I had 4 months to do it. And so I replaced this book. I had to read a book that was a classic, had to have been published over 100 years ago. So I put this one down and picked up Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte. I read an electronic copy on my phone. And even though this book is about half the size of Jane Eyre, and it took me almost an entire week to read Jane Eyre, I felt like I made way more progress in a much more timely way, and so I quit on this one and read Jane Eyre instead. I don't own a physical copy, but I think I'm gonna buy one now for my library because Jane Eyre, the Brontes, yeah. Read a book that has been adapted to a movie. I read The Wife by Meg Wolitzer. I also returned it to the library. I love that book. I loved a lot of things about that book, which kind of doesn't explain why I gave it such a low rating. I'm gonna have to adjust my rating. As I think more about that story, I think it deserves a better rating than what I gave it, but I read it. The Field Guide to the North American Teenager by Ben Philippe. I read this one, Ben Philippe's young adult novel set in Texas about a Haitian Canadian teenage immigrant to the United States. I read it. 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton. This is a book that was set in Europe. I read the 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. I had stopped and I had to start again, so it took me a lot longer to read this book than I had planned because I had to read the first 120 pages or so twice, but I read it. This is to read a previous Newbery Medal winner or honor book. Ramona Quimby, Age 8 by Beverly Cleary. I read it. I need to film my closer book review so I can bring this one back to the library. There's no reason for me to be hanging on to a children's book, especially a huge children's book like this. I need to get it back to the library pretty soon so a kid can read it. I also have Beer Town by Frederick Bachman, which is to read a book that was translated from another language. I read Bear Town by Frederick Bachman. This is the first time I'm reading one of his novels, and I was blown away by this story. I've owned this book for a while, and I kept just forgetting to pick it up from the bookshelf downstairs. And so now that I've read it, I kind of want to keep it on my nightstand to remind myself to go out and read the sequel and to read everything that this man has published that's been translated to English. I'm also participating in a read-along with Krista from Books and Jams. She hosts a Goodreads read-along, and in April the book is East of Eden by John Steinbeck. It's almost 600 pages, so I think this would be a good time to read this book. Disappointing, but I didn't finish this book. I started. I got to maybe about 160, but I'm gonna keep reading because I think I could probably always just refer to the Goodreads challenge and comment on there about my reading and my experience with the book. But I wish I'd gotten further in this book in April, but I'm gonna keep reading it slowly, slower than the read-along group, but yeah, still reading this one. At least I started. I also started reading Gandhi, The Years That Changed the World, 1914 to 1948 by Ramachandra Guha. I still haven't finished Gandhi. I'm still working on it. I'm still reading it slowly. Mr. Brown is reading. He's made a lot more progress in the book than he had last month. So at some point we will finish this book. You know what's really funny is he refuses to move on to another book until he finishes Gandhi. So I know he will finish it sometime. I don't know whether I'll finish it before or after him. That's still to be seen. I also have these other books that I have out from the library that I need to read for one reason or another. I'll tell you why. All My Puny Sorrows by Miriam Taves is one of those books. All My Puny Sorrows by Miriam Taves, I had to return to the library because it was due. I didn't get a chance to read it, but I'll get it again. American Marriage by Tayari Jones is one of those books. I read An American Marriage by Tayari Jones. I had to return to the library, but I read it before I returned it. I had to pay a late fee because it was overdue by a day, but I read it before I had to bring it back. And a book that I just picked up from the library yesterday is Becoming by Michelle Obama, which... Becoming by Michelle Obama, I started, but I couldn't finish it before it was due back at the library. I feel like I'm just gonna buy my own copy. That's a book that I don't think I'll get back as a reserve for a really long time. And even though I don't have room in my TBR for it right now, I'm probably gonna buy it just because I want to read it at some point. I don't have any physical arcs that I got from the publishers where I need to review in April, but I do have 4 NetGalley arcs that I want to get to because they're coming out pretty soon or they've already been released. Miracle Creek by Angie Kim. I did read Miracle Creek by Angie Kim, and I'm glad that I did because it's gotten a lot of attention, a lot of accolades. A lot of people have said really good things about it, and I'm one of them. My review should be up for that one pretty soon. Friend, The Study of Animal Language, and Wise Guy. There's a 4 NetGalley arcs I'm hoping to get to in April. I also read Guy Kawasaki's memoir / self-help book called Wise Guy, and my video review will be coming pretty soon, but I've already written a review on my blog, so if you'd like to check that out, that's on my blog, runwright.net. Links in the description box. Booktuber prize. So I have 6 books that I need to read in order to judge a round of the Booktuber prize. I'll link the Booktuber prize information down below as well if you're interested. I didn't read any of the Booktuber prize books that I need to read to judge in April. All of those are on my May TBR, but I said that I had 6 books. I only have 5 because I've read one of them previously, and I'm not planning to reread it now before the judging ballot is due. But no, I didn't read any of those books in April. Even though I have all of those books that I just talked about on my TBR, I'm gonna find a way to link them into the BookBuddyathon because I want to participate. They have a bingo board, and it's a 4x4 square bingo board, which is fantastic. And the challenges are associated with TV shows. A lot of them are TV shows that I really enjoy. The first challenge is 91210. Read a book with a number in the title. 9 Perfect Strangers by Leanne Moriarty. I've already read. BookBuddyathon was a little bit of a bust for me because I stopped keeping track of the challenge, but I did read some of the books, so I'll tell you about how I participated right here. 9 Perfect Strangers, yes, I read. It's over 400 pages. East of Eden by John Steinbeck. I didn't read East of Eden, the 400-page book, but I did read Jane Eyre, which is 600 and something pages, so that qualified. Challenge number 3, New Girl, a new to you author or book. I've never read anything by Miriam Taves. I haven't read anything by Meg Wolitzer, even though I read Meg Wolitzer's The Wife, so I did read something that was a new to me author. I also read other authors that I hadn't read anything from before. Claire G. Coleman, Charlotte Woods, Hannah Kent, Ben Philippe, a lot of them. Others of her books. Stuart Turton, I haven't read. Ben Philippe, I haven't read. I have a lot of new to me authors on my TBR. I'll find a book to participate in that one. Next is Pretty Little Liars, a thriller or a book with dark themes. 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. Yes, absolutely. Read this one. Definitely had some dark themes. Other books that I read that had a dark theme was Terra Nullius, because, I mean, there were some descriptions of some killings in this book that made this really dark, even though there's a sun, a blazing sun on the cover, very dark. Next challenge is Gilmore Girls to read a book off the Rory Gilmore reading list, which is funny because I've been participating in the Rory Gilmore reading challenge for several years now, and I own some of the books and just haven't gotten around to reading them. But Stephen Chbosky's Perks of Being a Wallflower is on her reading list, so I'm gonna read it, and it's pretty short. Yes, I read The Perks of Being a Wallflower, so that's another book that got crossed off the Rory Gilmore reading list. Next is Friends. Buddy read a book with your buddy. Yeah, I'm still buddy reading that Gandhi book with Mr. Brown, but it's not completed. So that challenge isn't complete in terms of reading the book, finishing it. But I did read Terra Nullius by Claire G. Coleman, and I did a buddy read of this one with Doris, who's one of the hosts of #Aussie April. And we did a Voxer discussion of Terra Nullius, so that counts as my buddy read. This challenge is Big Bang Theory. Read a book that your buddy thinks that you will love. Becoming by Michelle Obama. My husband has told me that he thinks I will love this book. He's heard his coworkers talk about this book. So again, I didn't finish Becoming by Michelle Obama, but Terra Nullius was recommended to me by you guys, my subscribers, and you were right in that I found it really interesting. I hadn't read anything by an Australian Indigenous group like this before, and so I appreciated the fact that I read this one. So you were right. I loved it. Even if I didn't love the story as much as I wish I did, I found it really important. And I did a full review of this one, so you could check it out. I'll link it down below. Next challenge is Sex and the City. You pick 4 and your buddy picks which one you read. I don't know which one that is yet. Yeah, I forgot about that challenge because I didn't revisit the challenges during the month. Like I said, I was kind of thinking that I'd quit the challenge. So I didn't do that, but it's fine. Next is Girls, a graphic novel, manga, or picture book. I didn't read any graphic novels or manga or picture books during the month, so no, I didn't complete that challenge. Book with orange on the cover. The Field Guide to the North American Teenager. Yeah, I read North American Teenager. I also read, I guess this is orange. It's kind of yellowish, orangish, and reddish. So yellow and orange together make red, I guess. That qualified. And Meg Wolitzer, the wife, also had orange on the cover. Teenager by Ben Philippe has orange on the cover, as does All My Puny Stories by Miriam Taves. Which I didn't read. If I get to either one of those, I'll meet that challenge. Yay! Then Will and Grace is to read a book with LGBTQIA+ themes. Both of these books had gay representation, and I read them in April, so I met that challenge. And then Glee, the last challenge, is a comfort read. It doesn't get more comfortable than reading a book from your childhood. So yeah, I read Ramona Quimby. I think Ramona Quimby, age 8 by Beverly Cleary, will satisfy that challenge. I think that was a really good month in terms of meeting my reading goals. I read all of these books that I mentioned in my April TBR, as well as a few other books that I no longer have the physical copies of. I read 14 books that were on my April TBR. So I'm gonna say that was a win. Leave me a comment down below. Let me know if you stuck to your reading goals in April, or if you went rogue and just went reading whatever you felt like, because that's good too. Give me a thumbs up if you like this video, subscribe if you want to see more. Let's talk in the comments, and until next time, happy reading. Bye.